This is Ahval Online, meeting point of accurate news and free comment on the current affairs of Turkey. Welcome to our podcast series.
Welcome to a new episode of Turkey Trend, a part of Ahval podcast series. I'm Nervana Mahmoud, and the topic today is Libya. After last week's conference in Germany, where the German country have gathered all the stakeholders in the Libyan conflict, the local Libyan stakeholders, regional countries involved, and global superpowers who are interested in the conflict. That's obviously including Turkey. The aim of the German Berlin conference, as stated officially, is to try to assist the United Nations in reaching a unifying position and vision to solve the crisis in the country. To discuss that further, particularly the role of Turkey in Libya, it's a pleasure to welcome one more time Libyan expert Aya Burweilla. Aya, thank you for joining me today.
It's my pleasure as always, Nervana. Thank you for having me.
Thank you. So let me start with the Libyan stakeholders. Can you, before they went to Berlin conference, can you just briefly highlight the where we up to in Libya at the moment?
Today in Libya, the majority of the country wants elections. They want foreign forces to leave. And they want to see a task force or strong countermeasures against corruption and financial crime. And of course, the unification of the country's institutions. This is where most Libyans stand, according to the latest perception surveys by USAID. And also you see forums, even in June 19 to 20, there was the Benghazi Forum, where 15 political parties and civil society organizations came together and released a communique where they demanded elections, presidential and parliamentary, and the removal of foreign forces and the restoration of Libyan sovereignty. So this is where the Libyans stand. Of course, as you know, in Libya, we have a huge problem with an Islamist proxy minority, Turkey's proxies in Libya, who are doing their best to sabotage elections and to keep foreign occupation of Libya going.
Okay, before I get into that, how did you perceive the dynamics between the international players in the Libyan crisis during the Berlin conference, particularly Turkey and Egypt?
Well, Egypt, there was, of course, tension between Egypt and Turkey, but that is expected and that is nothing new. So Turkey is trying against international law, against what Libyans want, against what its neighbors want, to stay in Libya, to keep this illegal foreign occupation of Libya. And of course, Egypt is 100% against that, as is the international community. And remember, it was Egypt that drew the line in the sand last year and told Erdogan, till here but no further.
Right.
And since then, the Turks and their proxies were not able to even look in the direction of the East. So there is a lot of tension because, you know, to Erdogan, the East is a prize. This is where Libya's assets are. So he wasn't, for the past year, imagine, they've been, you know, eating sand in the Northwest, not being able to move. Their mercenaries are, I don't know what they're doing. I do know that they're burglarizing and harassing Libyans, but other than that, they're not moving forward, and it's been a year now. Right. So there's tension. They're trying, the international community gathered in Berlin to make sure that the measures of the UN Security Council resolutions are going to be implemented. And of course, this is directed at Turkey and other foreign forces as well. And Turkey didn't want that. They want to stay.
Yes, I notice all that, you know, if you follow all the Turkish statement, they are trying to differentiate between the Turkish forces in Libya and the presence of Syrian mercenaries, for example. Do you think any of the other international players buying that argument?
No one, I think, who's over 12 years old is buying that argument. First of all, it's not even an argument. It's very, very clear. Libya wants all foreign forces out. Turkey, by dint of being Turkey, is a foreign country and it is a foreign force. And unless somebody died and turned Turkey into Libya, they are foreign forces. And, I think it's just reflective of AKP propaganda, Erdogan. It's not that, this regime is constantly coming up with insane statements. I remember the time when Erdogan said that Muslims discovered Latin America and it wasn't Columbus. And I am a Muslim, Nervana, and I would love to have these honors bestowed upon us, but this is insane and crazy. So what the AKP says, I think everybody who's mature takes what they say with a grain of salt. So they're trying to say that we're Turkey in Libya, but we're not foreign.
Yes.
And that's insane, and no one's buying it.
That's a very important point. But before I go there, the Turkish media again circulated, some news that they reached some understanding with Russia for the Russian Wagner forces to be withdrawn from Libya. Have you seen any Russian or other side confirming that narrative?
No.
Right.
But we do know that Russia has signed off on the UN Security Council resolution saying for all foreign forces and mercenaries to leave.
Yes.
And President Macron has made a very practical proposal on the timetable on these foreign forces to leave, and proposes Turkey's mercenaries, which is are over 10,000 now in Libya.
Yes.
At some point, it reached almost 17,000 for the Turkish Syrian forces to leave, followed by Wagner. The numbers on Wagner estimated, though it's hard to confirm, is around 2,000. The difference between these two mercenaries is that the Wagner mercenaries, as you can see, you can barely see them. They're
obviously no way that the Russian are numbers, and they are private contractors, and they are not matching the numbers supported by.
Well, and they're working with the National Army. Remember, Nervana.
Yes.
For example, the Americans had over 100,000 mercenaries in Iraq. So it's a different arrangement. Whereas Turkey is an occupying force, and they're getting involved. They have proxies in the capital. They interfere in domestic political affairs. They threaten Libyan politicians, as you saw what happened with our foreign minister when she demanded foreign forces to leave. So everybody knows that it's not the same.
To another point, one of the prominent pro-Turkey politicians in Libya is Khalid al-Mishri. And Khalid have made a lot of controversial statements recently. Number one, he claimed that the majority of Libyans have Turkish roots, and that was his way of justifying the legitimacy of Turkish forces in Libya. But number two, which is even more alarming, is that he expressed clearly that his group, the Muslim Brotherhood, will not tolerate an outcome of an election which can bring Haftar into presidency or any prominent position in Libya, and threatened of forces. I'm sorry. So how do you feel about his statements?
Well, Mishri is a laughing stock in Libya. He's the subject of widespread ridicule for the reasons you just described. He's not a serious character. He's a member of the Muslim Brotherhood, which, by the way, the parliament has designated as a terrorist organization. And in the same conversation that you referenced, he was praising well-known terrorist, Wissam bin Hamid, who was the leader of the Benghazi Mujahideen Shura Council, which is a coalition that included Ansar al-Sharia that attacked the US consulate and murdered Ambassador Stevens. And he also fought alongside the Islamic State. This is the individual, this is the terrorist that Khalid Mishri was praising. Khalid Mishri, despite his fantasies about the majority of Libyans having Turkish origin, I don't spend much time on fantastical phrases by the AKP regime or the Muslim Brotherhood. But it does tell us a lot. It tells us about their dishonesty. It tells us that they are accustomed to deceiving, misrepresenting Libya on the international stage. And also it shows to Libyans that this is not an individual who is loyal to Libya. He is obviously a proxy for other powers. And this has been, in fact, established by leaks last year that showed that Khalid Mishri was actually receiving money from the Qatari government. And even recent leaks, the first one was in September 2020, the second one was released in January 2021, showing serious financial inconsistencies with Mishri. So Mishri is a corrupt politician. He's not considered, he is anti-democratic. He has expressed his desire to sabotage free and fair elections. He continues these efforts. But when I heard what he was saying, I saw a man who was cornered. What he's saying is very desperate. Usually what they try to do is hide what they are, you know, especially to the West. They pretend to be democratic and stuff like that. But now he's outright saying he's exposing himself. And so what I saw is a very desperate man. People like Khalid Mishri are hearing the fat lady sing. The international community does not want Libya to continue being a basket case. Libyans, they know that Libyans deserve sovereignty and peace, and they know who the spoilers are. And I personally am not surprised that Mishri was saying this, because remember what they did in 2014.
Correct.
When they lost the elections, they violently invaded the capital, and they started looting, they started killing, and they took power by force. So what he said was alarming to Libyans. I think it was alarming to the international community. I think he has now identified himself as a spoiler. Remember in the UN Security Council resolutions, they call for sanctions against spoilers of elections. So Khalid Mishri might be facing, I think, further legal investigation for treason, for financial corruption, and of course now sabotaging free and fair elections.
Right, let me go back to the Berlin conference and the state of play between Turkey and Egypt, because my understanding that Turkey tried to amend one of the articles of the final statement of the Berlin conference, but Egypt have managed to stop that, if I stand to be corrected. And I would like to highlight that a little bit more. Why Turkey was trying to amend the article?
Because Turkey introduced reservations. They expressed their reservation, which they've and to me it was quite ridiculous, because until today, they are violating arms embargo. They're violating Libya's sovereignty. They have made a joke out of Operation Irini. So of course they're reserving reservations to international law. They want to keep their foreign forces. They want to keep occupying Libya. Remember, this is a broke country. Erdogan and his inner circle are running on fumes. They have no money. Turks are being persecuted. They're being oppressed. A sizable portion of Turks are living under the poverty level. When I mean living under the poverty level, not being able to eat properly.
Right.
So there are a lot of problems internally in Turkey, and these guys are looking for money, and they've been looting Libya, and they want to continue doing that. So this is all about how they can enrich themselves.
What was the Article 5 about exactly? Like, what was the wording of Article 5? Are you aware?
They just expressed their reservations for foreign forces. They want to keep modern day colonialism going, and it's absolutely outrageous that we're in the 21st century. Yeah. And here's a country they want to keep occupying this, regardless of what Libyans want. Our foreign minister. Yeah. Libyans have asked for the Turks to leave.
Yes.
And he got his proxies to attack Libyans. So we're under, you know, what they've managed to do in Cyprus, he's trying to repeat in Libya.
Did the Egyptian manage to stop that? So at least the
Turks. The Egyptians, you know, the Egyptian Foreign Service is very sharp. It is an old civilization. They know all the games. Most countries, they've been around even longer than the AKP. They have a very different attitude. They've clocked Erdogan. They know how to handle bullies. Let's just say they know what the game is. You know, with the EU, they say that they try to have a carrot and stick approach to Turkey, when it's more carrot and carrot approach. But Egypt's approach is stick, stick, and then maybe carrot.
Right.
They know how to communicate with a guy like Erdogan. They don't miss a beat. They pay attention to wording. So they saw that Turkey was trying to sneak in some sort of fake clause that they will later then abuse, and Egypt put its foot down and blocked it.
Good. Which bring me to what next after the Berlin conference? First of all, what is the role for military forces in Libya after the Berlin conference, especially the position of Haftar?
Well, Haftar remains ready. He has already, a few weeks ago, Libya had its largest military parade in its history.
Yes.
The army and the parliament. Remember that Haftar was appointed as head of the army by the only internationally recognized democratic elected parliament of Libya.
Yeah.
And the parliament wants elections, the army wants elections. This whole fight is about sovereignty and self-determination, which is basic rights of any people in the world. So even before Berlin, we already had the Geneva 5+5 military agreement, which called for the removal of all foreign forces. You can't have free and fair elections while your country, when the capital is under foreign occupation. So the army is very, very clear. They want the foreign forces out. They want free and fair elections to happen. And they're ready to protect the rights of Libyans for free and fair elections. Everybody wants free and fair elections, except the Islamists. They want a tyrannical form of power. They want power by appointment, whether foreign appointed or self-appointed. So the army continues. It retains its superior position. If you look at the map of Libya, the national army controls almost 2/3 of Libya, and they certainly control the most important parts of Libya. So this is the position of the army. I want to remind everyone that there was already the Geneva 5+5, which called for all foreign forces to leave.
Correct.
And now Libyans are kind of worried. It's almost a year now. There needs to be action. There needs to be implementation. So what do you do when you have armed men who refuse to leave? And this goes back to the April 2019 offensive. The army, when it launched an offensive in 2019, is to remove these militias and proxies, who for 6 years, actually, if you want to be really specific, for 10 years, refused to disarm. So we have a serious militia problem. So how do you get militias and intransigent states to comply with international law? This means that if Turkey continues, I guess force will be back on the table by the international community. And this is something Erdogan has to consider. Though I do believe that even from the Turkish side, I think domestically, Erdogan is going to be facing an implosion. So he's going to have to rethink how thin he's going to stretch himself.
Right. Do you think Berlin conference have offered some sort of legitimacy for Haftar forces?
The legitimacy was always there. There's only one, I mean, we have to legally, it's always there. And if you look at the GNA's statements, the GNA was supposed to work with the army. The GNA was parachuted into Tripoli. They have no forces. But in the past few years, there's been a huge propaganda effort to confuse people on who's who in Libya.
Yes.
The LNA is there. They work with various governments fighting even terrorism in the south, which the American administration has praised over and over again. So this is the legitimacy in the eyes of the Libyans and in the international community is there. You have Qatari aligned and Turkish aligned pundits who try to confuse audiences on who's who. Yes. As I said, the Libyan army is the army of the parliament.
Fair enough. Which bring me to the last question. What's next? Because the Islamists seems to be adamant that they will want some conditions before they allow their election, while others, most of the other politicians and stakeholders in Libya are clear that they want the election first, and that's clearly the Egypt position, other Arab countries, and at least the EU, if from the way I saw it. Can you see the future of the Islam? I mean, obviously, I understand nobody can see the future, but how do you see it? Do you think the Islamists are just playing games, but they will back down? Or do you think there is a potential of confrontation again in Libya, military confrontation?
If things go as they are, I said in my previous interview with the Greek Current that people are just worried that the Berlin conference is just another talk, it's another psychotherapy session, it's another knitting group where people are going to just talk. People want action. And the truth is, with armed gangs or armed groups, it's very difficult to disarm them without force. Yeah. It's hard to convince them. All these political processes have been tried. Negotiations, talking. In the meantime, Libya goes into one abyss into another. And as I said before, that's why there was the launch of the April offensive. It was enough was enough. So usually armed gangs do not lay down their arms without unless they're forced to. And the international community may very well have to weigh that option to force any spoilers or terrorist organizations or militias who want to stop elections from happening.
Well, let's hope that will happen, because I think nearly everyone who care about Libya want an election to happen, want democracy to start, and want the country to go on the right path again. And on that note, I thank you very much, Aya, for joining me again. And thank you for everyone who watched this episode, and see you for the next episode of Turkey Trends. Goodbye.
Goodbye.
You can follow Ahval News Online podcast series through Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, Google Podcasts. You can follow Ahval News Online podcast series through Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, for your ears, Google Podcasts, and attention. SoundCloud. Thank you for listening to our podcast. All you need to know about Turkey is here, for your ears, mind, and attention. Thank you for listening to our podcast.